My name is Thea Afton, and I'm 31 years old. On my second day of being a mother, I stood on the sidewalk outside my in-laws' stone gate, holding my day-old daughter, next to two suitcases somebody else had packed for me. And behind that oak front door, my mother-in-law had just informed me there was no room in that house for a useless wife. My husband watched from an upstairs window. He didn't open it. I want to tell you I did something dramatic. I didn't. I stood there in the June heat with a newborn against my chest, doing what I do for a living, which is math. And then a gray sedan pulled up to the curb, and my mother stepped out of it with a lawyer and a folder. And what was inside that folder hit my in-laws' famous family like weather. Nobody saw it coming. Least of all me. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet women keep the receipts, and the endings get earned, not gifted. If stories about family, betrayal, and boundaries are your kind of stories, you're home. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from, and be sure to subscribe. Now, let me back all the way up. I grew up in half of a duplex on Garnet Street with my mother, June Afton, who spent 30 years as an escrow officer at the title company downtown. My father left when I was 3. What I remember of him is a jean jacket and the smell of spearmint gum, and honestly, the jacket might be from a photograph. My mother never talked him down and never chased him, which tells you most of what you need to know about June. She is not a warm blanket kind of mother. She is a snow tires in October kind of mother. Practical love, scheduled maintenance, zero speeches. Her entire professional life was reading documents other people were too excited to read. Young couples buying first houses, farmers refinancing, big families quietly mortgaging their summer places. And her one commandment, repeated through my whole childhood like a pledge of allegiance, was, read it before you sign it, and if they won't let you read it, that's your answer. We were never poor, exactly. We were careful. Coupons, consignment, one vacation a year to a lake 2 hours away, and I want to be fair to my younger self about what that carefulness did to me. It made me hungry. Not for money. For the other thing. The thing I saw through lit windows on the walk home from school. Whole families. Grandparents at the table. A dad carving something. A name everybody at church already knew. A house you belonged to instead of a half a house you rented. My mother built us solid ground, and I spent my childhood looking over the fence at castles. It took me 31 years, 2 suitcases, and 1 gray sedan to finally understand which one of those things holds up in a storm. Every town like Cedar Glen has a family like the Vosses, the stone gateposts on Beaumont Avenue, the name on the furniture store downtown, on a brass plaque at the library, on the founder's wall at the country club. Voss. 3 generations photographed in front of the same fireplace every Christmas for the local paper. The kind of photo where even the golden retriever looks like it inherited something. Patricia Voss chaired the Heritage Committee. Harold Voss waved from a convertible in the 4th of July parade. When people in Cedar Glen said that name, their voices did a little bow in the middle of the sentence. I was 12 when I asked my mother, over meatloaf in our half of the duplex, why our family couldn't be like the Vosses. My mother didn't look up from her plate. "We don't buy names, honey," she said. "We buy ground." I rolled my eyes the way 12-year-olds are legally required to do, but here's the part I didn't have the eyes to see back then. She said it without any envy in her voice. None. And there was something else in there instead. Something dry and knowing. The tone she used at work when a customer bragged about a deal she'd already read the papers on. It was the voice of a woman who had spent 30 years at the escrow desk of a small town, watching every big name's documents cross her counter, one signature at a time. My mother knew things about the castles of Cedar Glen the way a plumber knows things about beautiful houses. I never thought to ask what. For about 19 more years, I wouldn't. And by the time I did ask, I was standing on a sidewalk holding everything I owned. I met Grant Voss because of a spreadsheet. I do books for small businesses. I have since I was 23, self-employed, my name on the door of a one-room office, Afton Bookkeeping. Voss Home Furnishings hired me to untangle their inventory accounts, and the manager assigned to work with me was the owner's son, 30 years old, sleeves rolled, self-deprecating in a way nobody with that last name had any right to be. Grant was, and I want to be fair here, because it matters later, genuinely likable. He remembered how I took my coffee by the second morning. He did impressions of the sales staff that were kind at the center. When the numbers embarrassed the store, he didn't blame the previous bookkeeper. He laughed and said, "We're a 100-year-old family business, Thea. We've had 100 years to develop bad habits." I liked him in a way that snuck up on me, the way a slow leak becomes a flooded basement. 8 months later, he brought me to Beaumont Avenue to meet his parents. Patricia Voss received me in a living room that smelled like lemon oil and old money, and she looked at me the way an appraiser looks at a chair somebody claims is an antique. The slow scan, joint by joint, checking for glue. Her first question was not what I did or how we met. She tilted her head, smiled with the front of her face, and said, "Afton. Now, whose people are the Aftons?" I said my mother worked at the title company and my people were mostly my mother. Something flickered behind Patricia's eyes and filed itself away. I thought it was disappointment. It took me 5 years to learn it might have been arithmetic. We got married the spring I turned 28. At the club, under a tent Patricia selected. Beside flowers Patricia approved, in front of 200 guests, of whom I could name maybe 40. I had wanted something small at the lake. I lost that negotiation so early I'm not sure it ever officially opened. "The town expects certain things from this family," Patricia told me, patting my hand like a gavel. "The one fight I won quietly at the county clerk's office. I kept my name. Thea Afton." When Patricia found out, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Voss brides take the name," she said. "It's an honor other women have been grateful for." My mother, who was standing nearby in her one good dress, said nothing, but her eyebrow performed a complete sentence. Grant did what I would spend the next 5 years watching him do. He stepped into the middle with his hands up, charming, apologetic in both directions at once. "Mom, it's her name. Thea. Mom means well." A sentence for each of us. Nobody defended. Everybody was managed. I filed it under wedding stress. And one more thing happened that weekend that I filed and forgot. At the reception, I overheard the club's events manager murmuring to Harold by the bar. Something about the balance, about the card, about maybe the other account, Mr. Voss. Harold's parade wave faltered for exactly 1 second before he laughed and clapped the man's shoulder like they were old teammates. "Rich people's paperwork," I told myself, "the plumbing of castles." My mother, across the room, was watching the same conversation over the rim of her glass, and she was not surprised at all. The plan was to live at Beaumont Avenue for a year, maybe 2. Save up, then buy our own place. "The East Wing has its own bath," Grant said. "It's practically an apartment." You can hear the sentence I should have questioned. Practically. We moved in with my office plants and his record collection, and for 2 weeks it was a soft landing. Big kitchen, garden, Sunday dinners with cloth napkins. Then, on a Tuesday, Patricia knocked on our door holding a leather book, and I got introduced to the household ledger. "Every couple under this roof contributes," she explained, warmly, the way you'd explain gravity. Our share came to $800 a month. Toward the household, do the first, recorded in her ledger with everyone's initials in a column like a rooming house from 1910. And then, almost as an afterthought, the second ask, delivered as a compliment. "Grant tells me you're a wizard with books. The family's accounts are a shambles, dear." It would mean so much. Meaning, I would also be doing the Voss family bookkeeping. For free. I want to be honest about what I felt. Because this is the part of the story where I stop being able to blame anyone but the ledger inside me. I felt chosen. Useful. The girl from the duplex handed the keys to the castle's books. I said yes before Grant could even look up from his phone. $800 a month for the privilege of doing free accounting for people whose gate had a name on it. My mother would have read that contract twice and slid it back across the counter. I signed it with a smile. In my defense, nobody handed me anything to read. That turned out to be the whole design. Here's what you learn when a 100-year-old name hands you its checkbook. Names don't cash. I had the Voss household accounts balanced inside a month, and what they balanced to was a slow, elegant leak. The furniture store's transfers to the family had thinned every year for a decade. The club dues, the Heritage Committee galas, the landscaping service with the embroidered shirts, the wine deliveries. None of it had thinned at all. The house consumed like 1985. The income arrived like a store with 2 big box competitors out by the highway. I did what I do for every client, bleeding quietly. I built a gentle little proposal, trim the landscaping to twice a month, rebid the insurance, pause one of the club memberships. Harold hadn't touched the golf course in 2 years. I presented it after Sunday dinner with the soft voice I use on proud old shop owners. Patricia listened the way a queen listens to weather she has no intention of experiencing, and then she folded her hands and delivered the house motto with a smile that ended the meeting. This family does not live like accountants, dear. Fine. But one line in those books would not leave me alone. Every month, $940 went out to something called GN Servicing, LLC. Autopay, memo line blank, going back years, no file, no folder, no explanation anywhere in the drawer of documents Patricia had surrendered to me. It wasn't insurance. It wasn't the store. When I asked Patricia, she said, "Harold handles that," in the same tone as the motto. When I asked Harold, he turned up the volume on a golf tournament and asked if I'd ever seen anything like this young man's short game. I let it go. Write that down somewhere. I let it go. At the back of the Voss property, past the garden, there's a 2-story carriage house, brick, slate roof, gorgeous bones, abandoned to boxes and mice since sometime around the moon landing. The first time I walked through it, I did what I now recognize as a dangerous thing for a hungry heart to do in a beautiful ruin. I furnished it in my head. And Patricia, who missed nothing, watched me do it. That fall, over dessert, she made the offer with Grant nodding beside her like a notary. "Fix it up, you two. That's your place. Every young Voss couple needs a nest, and heaven knows we're not using it. A 2-bedroom home, on the family land, ours." The girl from the duplex actually teared up at the table, which I'm sure was noted in a ledger somewhere. But I am still my mother's daughter, so the next morning I asked, as lightly as I could, whether we might put something in writing. Nothing dramatic, just a page. A lease, a life estate, anything with ink on it. Patricia looked at me with gentle, wounded amusement, the expression you'd give a child who asked you to sign for a hug. "Family doesn't do paperwork, dear." I asked Grant privately to press. He kissed my forehead and said the 11 words I'd be hearing in my sleep for years. "It's my parents, Thea. I promise you, you can trust me." So here's what I did, and thank God for the habit. I said okay. I opened my savings. $38,000. Every dollar of it earned one small business ledger at a time, and I hired the contractor myself. And I kept every receipt, every invoice, every transfer, every canceled check, in a green folder in my office. You'll see why that matters. The renovation took most of a year, and I loved it the way you love a thing you're secretly building your whole future inside. I chose the doorknobs, real brass, warm in the hand. I stood in the gutted kitchen with the contractor, a patient bear of a man named Gil, arguing happily about where a window should go. Grant came out on weekends, swung a hammer for an hour, and got photographed doing it. I came out every day I could, and got sawdust in my hair. Sunday dinners, Patricia began mentioning me almost fondly, which should have been my warning, because her fondness always arrived with a moral attached. One night, passing the potatoes, she surveyed the table and delivered it. "You know what I appreciate about Thea? She contributes. Everyone under this roof earns their keep." Heads nodded around the china like it was scripture. Harold said, "Here, here." Grant winked at me. "That's Mom for you," and speared a green bean. And I sat there feeling, God help me, proud, earning my keep. As if that sentence were a compliment and not a price tag. As if anyone had ever asked what Grant's keep cost, or Harold's, or the retrievers. That's the thing about a house with a ledger instead of a heart. The rules only have gravity for some people, and you can live there a long time before you notice which way things fall. That Christmas, the 3-generation photo in front of the fireplace happened as always. Patricia seated center, Harold's hand on her shoulder, Grant behind. I took the picture. I remember thinking, next year I'll be in it. Hold that thought. It expires in about 8 months. By late winter, the carriage house had drywall, plumbing, and my whole heart. Gil was down to trim work and paint. Grant and I stood in the empty upstairs bedroom one Saturday, the light coming through the new window I'd fought for, and he put his chin on my head and said, "Crib goes there." and pointed to the corner, and I cried a little into his coat, because 2 days earlier in the bathroom of our East Wing practically apartment, I had watched 2 pink lines appear on a test. We told the family at Sunday dinner. I will now describe Patricia Voss receiving the news of her first grandchild, because it happened in 2 distinct movements, like a short symphony. Movement 1. Genuine delight. She clapped her hands once, actually glowed, said, "A Voss baby." And for 4 full seconds I saw the woman Grant swore existed under the committee chair. Movement 2. Arriving before the pie was cut. Recalibration. "Now," she said, folding her napkin. "How are you planning to manage your little business? Clients can be so demanding, and you'll be needed at home. We should think about what your months look like. Not how are you feeling. Not have you told your mother. What do your months look like? Which, if you speak fluent Patricia, means, what does your cash flow look like?" I said work was flexible, that bookkeeping travels well, that I'd managed harder things than a baby. She smiled and said, "Of course, dear," and wrote nothing down, because the ledger in her head never needed paper. I didn't know it yet, but somewhere in that pause between the clap and the napkin, my file in that house had been moved from asset to liability, pending review. At 24 weeks, I started bleeding on a Tuesday morning and spent the night in a hospital bed listening to my daughter's heartbeat gallop on a monitor, which resets your entire definition of what matters. The diagnosis had a Latin name, the prescription was plain English: bed rest, modified until delivery. No commuting to clients, no lifting. Stress, the doctor said, looking at me the way doctors look when they mean it, is not optional to avoid. It's medical. Grant held my hand and said all the right things in the room. My mother drove down before dawn and said almost nothing, which from June is devotion, and left a cooler of food in my refrigerator labeled by day of the week. And my income dropped through the floor. I kept 4 clients I could serve from a laptop in bed. I lost 9. The first of the month came. For the first time in 3 years, I could put $500 into the household envelope instead of $800. I wrote a note explaining, promised to catch up, and slid it under Patricia's ledger like a schoolgirl leaving an apology on a teacher's desk. Nothing was said. That's the part people don't understand about houses like that. Nothing is ever said. Instead, 2 mornings later, the ledger appeared on my breakfast tray, open to the contributions page, my initials at the top of a column, and next to the current month, in Patricia's fountain pen hand, a small, neat, red circle. That was all. A red circle, delivered with toast. Grant said, "I'll cover it. Don't stress. Remember what the doctor said." And then his next paycheck from the family store came up short, because, he said, rubbing his neck, "The store's a little tight right now." The store. Tight. File that next to GN servicing, $940 a month, memo line blank. Here's how a house disappears you, by degrees, politely, at dinner. 3rd trimester, I was allowed downstairs for meals, and I sat at that cherry wood table like a chair that talked. Conversation flowed around me. The committee, the club, the neighbors' addition. If I mentioned the nursery, subject changed within 2 sentences. Patricia developed a repertoire of stories that all had the same moral, delivered to the table at large while looking at no one, which meant me. When I was carrying Grant, she'd say, ladling soup, I hosted 40 people for Harold's parents' anniversary, on my feet all evening. Women of this family have never been delicate. Harold would nod at his soup. And Grant. I want to be precise about Grant because he's not a villain. He's something that costs you more slowly. Grant got quiet. Not cold. Quiet. He'd squeeze my knee under the table. A private telegram. Sorry, you know how she is. And say nothing above the tablecloth. And I learned that a squeeze under a table is what surrender feels like when it still loves you. So I did what my mother's daughter does when the world goes soft underfoot. I kept books. My own now. A plain notebook in my nightstand. Every household payment I'd ever made, dated. Every carriage house invoice, cross-reference to the green folder in my office. $38,000 in renovations. $33,000 in household contributions over 3 years. I wasn't planning anything. I want that understood. There was no strategy. Only a bookkeeper laying sandbags out of habit. 1 page at a time, the way some women pray. Then one night, passing the study door on my slow lap of the hallway, I heard Patricia on the phone, her voice low and vicious in a way the committee never got to hear. I understand the situation, but this household cannot carry a mouth that doesn't work. I stood in that hallway with my hand on my belly and made myself believe she was talking about the store. An employee, a vendor, anyone. You'd have done it too. At 8 months pregnant on doctor-ordered calm, you ration what you're able to know. But I'll tell you who has never once lied to me. Paperwork. And if you've ever watched a promise die by paperwork, a name left off a deed, we'll write it down later that never found a pen. Put it in the comments, because this next part will feel like your own memory. The carriage house was finished. Finished. Gil had walked me through on video call, brass knobs warm in the afternoon light, my window exactly where I'd fought for it. I proposed the obvious. We'd move in before the baby came. Get settled. Set up the crib. 10 steps from the main house but a door of our own. And the stalling began. So smooth it took me 2